Go. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Excess Succeed. This is your host, Gearface. I'm joined once again by Faust. Peek behind the curtain here, everybody. Faust has been kind enough to do 2 back-to-back recordings, so if we're a little bit hoarse, we apologize. But Faust, thank you again so much for being here and for donating your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah. Always a pleasure talking to you. Today, we are learning about Zoey from way back in Red Horizon. Super excited to learn about this character. I know very little about her, and I was just telling Faust the things that I do know merit an additional disclaimer up front. We always do a couple disclaimers at the start of the show. I'm going to run through those first. Number one, we're going to be talking about playing Exceed to win on this show. And I think, actually, controversially, you should play Exceed for fun. The lines of play that we describe might not be fun. And if they aren't, don't play that way. Actually, that dovetails quite nicely into the things I was going to say about Zoey in particular, is that she is a character who has a reputation for being very, very strong. She is not a banned character, but she's pretty close from way back in the Red Horizon days. And 2, for being a character that enforces a kind of game that is not super fun for the opponent. So please Zoey responsibly. Make sure your opponent knows what they're in for when you play this character. Doesn't mean that you can't have fun with her, but the playing Zoey should be an opt-in, consent-based experience. Disclaimer number 2. We're going to be talking about... Nope, just said that one. Disclaimer number 2 is that we don't know everything. I don't know anything. Faust knows some things. Together, we'll find a way to knowledge here. But we're going to be talking in pretty absolute terms about strategy. There's going to be a lot of always do this, never do that. Take all that with a grain of salt. Exceed's not a solved game. Find your own lines of play with this character. Tell us why we're wrong, all of those things. But yeah, all that said, Faust, please. I'd love to know a little bit more about Zoey.
All right. So, as you said, Zoey is a season 1 character that definitely pushes some of the boundaries of Exceed to the point where it's really pushing it. Her ability really couldn't be printed into Modern Exceed ever. It does a lot of things that just don't make you play Exceed. It makes you play a completely different game that has a lot of frustration for your opponent, usually.
Okay.
We should look at her ability, which is if your attack hit, you may add the top card or discard to your gauge and return the attack to your hand.
All right, so I do, as we're talking here, I have Grasp and Gauge. I play Assault, right?
It'd be Grasp and discard, but yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Grasp and discard. Thank you. Assault goes off. I hit. It's my after timing. I add the top card of my discard to my gauge. And then this attack goes back to hand.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. It's a May effect, I noticed too.
It is a May. You also don't have to have a card in your discard.
Oh.
Yeah, it would say if you did return your attack to your hand if you had to have one.
Okay, so building Gauge might not happen, but I could conceivably just play the same card every single attack as long as I hit.
Yeah, have you ever wanted to play Sweep every strike for the rest of the game? Well, now you can.
Okay, I can see why this is a problem, because it turns out Sweep's a pretty strong card.
Yes. And then, the front side ability is bad enough as it is. And then you get to Exceed mode, which is where things get, actually broken.
Whoa.
Which is...
Whoa, hold up.
Yeah.
A second peek behind the curtain. With characters that I'm not familiar with, like most Red Horizon characters, I make it a point of not looking at the kit before we do these lessons. If your attack hit, you may add the top card or discard to your gauge, return attack to your hand, all the same. When you spend gauge, add the spent cards to your hand?
Yeah, so the cards that you put into your gauge from your discard, then you can spend the gauge to get them back to your hand. And it's just spending gauge.
That isn't in Strike.
Yeah, it's not even spending gauge as gauge. It's spending gauge for whatever you want. You can change cards with your gauge and put them back in your hand.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Okay, so yeah, this isn't allowed. You can't have this.
no, no,
And I like. There's a lot more cards on the table. I'm sure we'll get to them, but this effect you can't do in Exceed.
no. I mean, even if Zoe's deck was entirely normal, this would still be, too strong.
Right. So
Like,
so
if you
what can
whiff
I?
with something, it goes to your discard, and then you can, if you exceed, you can just put it from your discard into your gauge and then put it back in your hand.
So do I just effectively have infinite resources?
Yes.
Okay. So, ugh. Okay, so now we're to the second part of that disclaimer. Is the strategy with Zoe basically just to stall my opponent out?
Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, you can really kill people with Zoe pretty easily too. I mean, effectively, if you have any card in your deck, a normal, a special, an ultra, whatever, that your opponent cannot beat because their kit doesn't have a card to beat it,
Yeah.
you can just play that card for the rest of the game.
Okay, and they have a limited number of cards.
Yep.
They ran out of their dives and spikes that would beat my sweep, and
Mm,
I didn't run out of my sweep.
yep.
So I just mashed this over and over again until the game is over.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like looping sweep and focus is really good. She has some specials that are really nice to loop. The other one that is like the most notorious is if you're in exceed mode, you can block for 4 forever
Oh my
because
god.
your block goes to your gauge, and then you play your other block and you pay the block out of your gauge to get armor, and then it goes back to your hand, and the block will go to your gauge. So you just loop the 2 blocks forever for the rest of the game without drawing cards.
So that is like hardcore stall. That's stall that Exceed is not built to handle.
Yeah.
Okay, so 4 armor means that every poke that my opponent has does 0 damage to me. They only have a certain number of copies of things like Spike or Spike really is it. Um, I can just whittle away at their card supply, as you said, forever until the game is over.
Yeah, and like you can strike with block, and then you still have the 4 armor. They can strike you. You'll just go through their deck eventually.
Right,
You can always pay more for block if you want to because like you'll have cards and it doesn't matter to you.
right. Okay, so it is with great sadness that I remind viewers that we are talking about playing to win on this show. Is the strategy with Zoe that I need to exceed every game so that I can or that I should exceed every game to do this kind of super heinous stuff?
No, that's like one of the things that we can do. There's a lot of other like just unfair things that this character can do, being able to have infinite copies of anything.
That's
Um,
terrifying.
yeah,
So I should treat this as an option, not as
yeah.
my overall game plan.
If your opponent has no ignore armor, you can get to that point and then win the game, and just sit there and stare at your opponent until they draw, through 60 cards.
Right.
Is that a fun way to play Exceed? I don't really think so, but if
I
you want to win, go for it.
I agree with you. Yeah, and we're talking about playing to win on the show, man.
Yeah,
So that is an option if they don't have ignore armor, or if I need literally infinite resources. If I need this
yeah,
gauge to hand recursion.
yeah.
Uh, is there? But so that sounds to me then that there are competitive uses for my gauge that I should be thinking about.
Yeah. I mean, her ultras are fine. Um, like they can finish games. They're not bad. Um, like you want to put cards in your gauge so that you can use them as force or things when you're in exceed mode to get them back to your hand. Likely you're gonna end up discarding some cards or whatnot as you're on your front side, and then with your ability, you put them from your discard into your gauge because you're hitting your opponent with a card and returning it to your hand, and then later you can pay that gauge to then return those cards to your hand again if you whiff with them or something. Like if they
Right.
spike your block, you can then hit with an attack to put the block into your gauge, then put the block back into your hand.
Right. Right. Okay. So the game plan though still sounds like I mean this being a particularly heinous thing that I can do, and as you said, her ultras are good and can close games. I balancing between the gauge to exceed and the gauge to recur? Those are like my two, I guess, payout options. Don't really that's not the right tone because they don't go anywhere. But
Yeah.
that's my plan. Is either I'm going to exceed and get infinite resources or recur the resources that I already have and use them.
Yeah.
Okay. When she exceeds, she's already spent the gauge, right?
Yeah.
She
You
doesn't
don't
get the
get the
gauge
cards
that she
spent.
spent went on exceeding back to her hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so those cards at least are gone.
Not really, because you just hit with things and put them back in your
Right.
gauge.
They're gone for this
A
exact
few turns,
moment at
maybe.
least.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you
You,
personally? I mean, I don't know if you actually play Zoe, but in games that you have run with Zoe, do you personally prefer exceeding to win games, or if if you were a completely callous person with no regard for fun of the
the
game, would you
sanity
prefer
of my
exceeding?
opponent. So while Zoe is an unfair character, she does have a very high skill ceiling where exceeding or not exceeding really depends on what character you're playing against.
Okay.
Uh, if your opponent has a lot of disruption and ways to actually beat you in strikes, exceeding is a little better because it allows you to fail a few times and get the cards back you need.
Right.
Um, if your opponent just loses to a few of your options because their shapes aren't good enough, then you
You
don't need
don't
to
need it.
exceed. Yeah.
You just
And
you
then you can
you
just
just
play
keep
ultimate.
mashing the button that kills them.
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, it's like, in any fighting game, if you have a move that's broken enough, then nobody can beat it. You don't need to do anything else.
Sure. Okay. So the Zoe tournament player mindset is
Yep.
we go and look at my opponent. Actually,
Mhm.
hang on. Oh no, I just realized we're in April Fool's territory. I might be doing something horrible by pressing random right now. But
Alrighty.
yeah, this is Eva. This works. This is in season even.
Right.
So I'm Zoe and I see that my opponent is playing Eva. I look
Yep.
at Eva's kit, find the option that I have that they can't deal with, and abuse it over and over again. Or if such an option doesn't exist, I exceed.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the plan.
Yep.
Okay. Um
Yeah.
so the strategy is gonna come down to what my opponent can't deal with, but the exceed mode line is block forever, stall forever, kind of whatever you want to do forever by using your infinite resources. And if we were talking about strictly exceed side Zoe, is that kind of the end of the lesson? Like, is that sort of all we need to know about that line, or is there more tech to it that we can get into
I
later?
mean, the other thing is you actually have to find both your blocks. The funny thing about Zoe is that you'll only use like the top 10 to 15 cards of your deck in a game if you're using your cards. You almost never need to prep. You don't really need to do anything else because you always have cards.
Right.
So like if your blocks are on the bottom of your deck, you actually have to go through your deck manually to find it. And sometimes that's difficult.
And then you block forever.
Yes.
Okay. But so if we're talking about like game plan number one, find the option that you need to beat your opponent and then abuse that option. Okay, we can talk about those options. But if the other game plan is exceed mode Zoe recurring things,
Hmm.
is there anything else to that line that we even need to think about? Any other card in the kit that we really need to think about other than this one?
Uh, Realistically, no, not unless your opponent has a way to deal with it.
Okay. And we will know that from, if they have a lot of ignore armor
Yeah,
effects or something. Okay. So
yeah,
maybe
like
maybe what we can do then is as we go through these cards um and run the lesson, we mostly are talking about it in terms of Zoe isn't planning to exceed and recur this abuse this option over and over again.
mhm,
And we treat these like they're like we're looking at front side Zoe for the most part. And then
yeah,
if there are any particular interactions with her exceed mode that are worth noting, we talk about them when they come up with the
sure,
sort of stated understanding that really exceed mode Zoe is about this card. Does that
yep.
work for a lesson?
Yeah, I also will say, like, Well, infinite blocking is definitely a move. That's not the only thing that Exceed Mode Zoe does. Like, you're playing to win, you have infinite blocks. It's not as easy to get there as you think. So like exceeding to do other things is good too,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
Like
Yeah, we can talk about those as they come up. I
yeah,
guess I'm sort of struggling to figure out how to structure this lesson around a character who has an a game plan that is so dangerous and so strong that the only reason that you might not do it is out of respect for your opponent.
yeah. I
So so
mean,
so we'll figure it out, right? This might be a kind of a
yeah.
weird lesson.
All right, yeah. All right. So let's go over Zoe's cards.
Yeah,
So
let's do it.
let's start with Sure You Can, which is very similar to another card, Sure You Can.
Sure. I'm familiar
Um,
with Ryu. He's our training dummy.
yeah. So this is a fast that beats
Everything?
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's a pretty good sure you can.
Yes. It does. If you initiate with this, it beats every normal.
Yeah.
It will move out of the way of sweep. It will move out of the way of focus. It will stun everything that doesn't have guard, and that's about it. And then you put it back in your hand.
Yeah, okay. So already if my opponent's uh God, what is oh, wait, I was about to say if my opponent's options are down that beats this, I just mash it over and over again and do 2 damage at a time. But what beats this?
Yeah. Do you need like EX grasp or like a 1 to 4 guarded card, like a
Right.
Tatsu or something?
Right. All right. So once my opponent has run out of EX Grasp and Tatsu, my new game plan can just be stick to range one and mash this over and over again.
Yeah. The only thing that is problematic with that is that if you actually need to beat a sweep, you have to go to range 4. So you can't match this again
And
because
you
you're a
can't
range
walk
4.
back in, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean that isn't to say that this doesn't have utility further out, I guess, because it's an after effect on a speed 7 card that moves you. This is a way to
Oh
dodge
yeah.
some projectiles.
It's very good. This is again another card that has an effect that really can't be printed again.
Yeah.
After move is generally not printed on cards that are over speed 5.
Yeah.
There
It,
are
it's
a
a
few,
it's a really 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 difficult to manage effect for my opponents.
especially because this is move up to 2 spaces, so you can stay where you are, you can move back, you can move forward, you can move 1, you can move 2.
You know.
Like
Yeah.
the closest thing I can think of is like swoop, which is on Propeller Knight, but it advances 3.
Right. Right. Yeah, and flexible after movement at speed 7 is crazy.
Yeah. And then even if you use this just to whiff something, it goes to your discard, and then you hit with something, put it into your gauge, exceed, and put it back in your hand.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. And so that kind of loop, it's not immediate the way it would be for actually hitting with the card, but whiffing
yeah,
with this doesn't mean that it's gone forever.
yeah.
Okay.
And then the boost is just, eh. I mean, if you're looking for a specific card, sure. Discard your gauge, add that many cards plus 1 more from the top of your deck to gauge. It gives you 1 more gauge. So if you just want to use it to exceed, you can boost this on turn 1 and get a free gauge.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, it's a weird key charge.
Yeah.
Um
And then you have a card in your discard that if you hit with something, it'll go to your gauge.
right, and things being in your discard aren't necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're planning to if you're
Yeah.
planning to use those resources forever.
Mm.
This is something worth mentioning for me and Faust. This might be repeating ourselves because we just ran another lesson, but Zoe being a Red Horizon character might mean that not every card in her kit feels like it's perfectly balanced between an attack and a boost. Like there's a lot of I think the analogy that I used in the previous lesson was that it's like they put all the kits in the cards into a blender, but they didn't blend it long enough. So
I
there are
really
these
like
weird
that
chunks of
analogy.
power. Um, I assume that quite a bit of her power budget is in this, but I don't know yet. But
I'm
the fact that we can play the attack versus boost game and say that sure you can is way stronger than the boost, it might be something that comes up a lot. Is
Yeah,
that true, Faust?
that's true. I mean, Zoe's boosts are mostly okay. There's like 2 of them that are egregious.
Okay. So it might not be quite as uh, even a split or as difficult a decision as people who are used to Modern Exceed might be expecting.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a pattern with Red Horizon is that
Yeah,
all the cards are most of them are actually balanced to a degree. It's just like these three cards are the cards you use, and the rest of them are force.
sure. Or
That's
these
the
like these are boosts, these are attacks, these
yeah,
are force. That distinction is much harder to find most of the time in more recent seasons.
yeah, in modern, yeah,
Okay. Um. So for this one, it sounds like attack with a bullet. Like it's not particularly close. Sure, you can is just a really really strong card.
yes.
Okay. How
All
about
right,
Maori? Is Zoey Maori?
I don't know.
Yeah, all right. Citation needed, Red Horizon,
All
but
right,
okay. Maori Defender. Tell me a little bit about Maori Defender, Faust.
okay. This card is cross, but better. It's 1 to 2 3 6, so it's crossed outline. Hit,
Yep.
you may play a boost that does not cause a strike for free. If it is a continuous boost, do not discard it after the strike.
Okay.
So you can put in power, you can put in movement, you can put in speed, you can put in whatever you want.
And at hit timing, that power that you put in actually would impact this strike.
Correct.
Okay. So 5 damage cross. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, that's not the reason this card is broken beyond belief. There's another boost in her kit that if you use it with this is just so unbelievable. It's not even funny. But we'll get there. We haven't even started crossing the line yet.
Okay.
Uh,
I'm looking forward to it, I say
uh,
trepidatiously. But
it's very
at,
fun to show people.
on its face, this is just as you said, Cross but better. Cross is a really good card. A lot of people
Yeah.
are very high on Cross among the normals, and normals are pretty good. So,
The only thing that this doesn't beat cross on is it only retreats 2, so you can't beat cross or beat sweep at 1.
okay, so it's a more kind of narrow range band. It's a range 2 card for most of what I'm doing it using it for.
Yeah.
But I could then just play backstep or something if I needed
Yeah.
to get further out.
You can play backstep. If you hit your opponent, you can tech their boost before they get to use it.
Oh,
Which is kind of neat. You can put armor and guard in if you want to take less damage or something. Um, she has a +2 power boost in her kit, so you could do that or fierce.
if I'm not devoted to the block forever line, I could parry something.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, so even among the
Uh,
normals, without getting into whatever scary boost you're about to show me later on, um,
and keep
I got
keep in
options.
mind if you play an instant boost of this, right? It goes to your discard, and then you already hit with this, it'll go to your gauge.
Hang on, wait. Okay. So the this will go back to your hand if you want it to, but
Yeah.
the the thing that you put in your discard will immediately go to your gauge no matter what.
Well, you already hit because it's a
You
hit effect.
no, I'm sorry. I'm looking for where the may is. I'm seeing if there's any reason why you wouldn't do this, but you may add the top card of your discard to your gauge, and you just would, right? Like there's no particular
Yeah,
reason why you wouldn't take it
yeah.
from your discard to your gauge. So it's a gauge builder as well.
Yeah, it also means that you put the card that you boosted in your gauge. So if you did want to parry something for some reason, the block is still in your gauge.
Oh God, I get you. Okay, so you can still don't worry, viewers. The block forever line is still online,
Yeah, it's
even if you
still
got rid of.
alive.
All right,
Yeah,
thank goodness. Okay, so good card, good attack. It seems like
yeah,
even without any particular scary boost things that we'll learn about later.
yeah. And then you can use it to dodge things. It retreats too. If you're range 3, you can play this just to like duck out.
Yep, yep, just like
Yep,
Cross.
yep. And then there is the boost. I don't. This is the boost, I guess. It draw until you have as many cards in your hand as your opponent. You really never have less cards than your opponent, unless I guess you're playing with like big hand guile or like gold Lewis or something.
And in that case, you'd have to discard a bunch of cards anyway because you're not
Yeah,
you're not striking.
yeah.
Okay, so
It's
we can ignore this basically.
pretty much. I mean, you can use it if like you really want to dig through your deck, but most of the time you're not going to draw more than 2 when you're playing 2/4. So like,
What's the point?
yeah,
and you're giving up. Well, giving up is strong with Zoe, but you are
Yeah,
temporarily inconveniencing yourself out of a copy of Maori Defender.
yeah.
Okay, so
Uh,
again, pretty strong use case for the attack side of these two cards so far.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. And there's Gale Blade. This is mostly a fair attack. It's just a projectile, and then it moves one. Like if this was printed onto in a normal character kit, I'd probably say this card's pretty fair.
Yeah, it seems fine.
Speed 5, 5 speed, 3 power. That's a pretty fine stat line. Hit, put a copy of this card from your discard into your gauge after move one space. So what you can do with this is you can EX it. The EX copy goes to your discard when you reveal it. Then the hit effect puts it into your gauge. Then you return this to your hand and you put another card into your gauge.
Okay, so you could conceivably, I mean, again, Zoe can kind of loop everything, but it's a way to recur this attack.
Yeah.
Okay.
It makes the EX significantly better because you get 2 gauge if you EX it.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
it's it I'm tracking the cards as they go through the zones. So the hit effect happens. Put a copy of this card from your discard into your gauge.
Yeah.
You needed the EX attack because your regular recursion stuff would happen at after timing.
Yeah, so you EX this. You don't have
Right,
to EX it, but if you EX it, the X copy goes when you reveal the attack before you even validate everything,
right,
right?
right,
And then if this hits, you put the card that you just put into your discard because you EX'd it into your gauge,
right.
and then with your after timing, you can put another card from your discard into your gauge,
And
whatever the
then
top card of your discard.
still have this
Yeah.
to attack with.
Yes.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
the other thing that is kind of unintuitive is that if you have an after effect and you return the card in play to your hand, then the other after effect doesn't happen. So
Oh,
if you
there's no card
don't want,
anymore.
yeah, if you don't want to move one, you return this to your hand first, and then you don't have to move.
Okay. Oh, because the move isn't optional. At least it's not printed as optional on the card. So
Yeah,
you would have to uh, disappear the card from reality to not move with it.
you can do this. Yeah, you can do the same thing with cross.
Got it. Oh, interesting. Okay, so you can cross out backing up if you really need to. Um.
Like if you
Okay.
have like a cross counter or something that you don't want to back up into, you can just put the
Sure.
cross
If you
back in your hand and stay there.
for whatever reason you need it like an on curve poke that doesn't do anything else.
Yep.
Um. Okay.
And you get to
So
choose that after you see your opponent's card.
right. Yeah. This whole thing is happening at post reveal timing. So the this is the first time that we've talked about um the exact mechanics of the way that this recursion works. There is a may effect on here, and there are going to be times when you don't want to recur the same attack over and over again, I assume. And
Yes.
maybe it's only when you only have an empty discard, but if it's a fight between gauge and um gauge and recursion, right? If you have zero things in discard, you're either going to get this back or it's going to go to gauge.
Mhm.
Any of these cards, not just Gale Edge, Gale Blade rather. Um, I can see why that would be a fight. Other than that, why wouldn't you just recur it every time?
Because if you recur a normal to your hand, they can read you.
Okay, so specifically for the normals, you need to be very careful about the leaked information that it would cause.
Yeah, and
I-
that's mostly it.
Okay, if it's a special, you can and you have a discard pile, you can be
Yeah,
pretty safe to just mash recursion for as long as
yeah,
you need to.
and even then, like sure you can is a card that even if I don't have a discard, I would probably put it back in my hand anyway.
Right, because it's strong enough that the gauge isn't gonna be a competitive use for it.
Yeah, a card that beats everything is probably better than having a gauge.
Sure. And also, I mean, like building gauge is something that we devote quite a bit of time to in terms of how to play a character.
Mhm.
Building discard is not, because all you need to do is play Exceed, right? Like
Yeah,
you will probably have things in your discard for most of the game. It won't actually be a decision you need to make, right?
yeah. I'm also gonna just let you know now. Um, Zoe also doesn't really care about building gauge too much. I know I said the Hersey, but it's crazy,
Right.
but we'll get to it. The next card we get to, I'll show you why.
Okay, sure. Yeah, let's keep going.
Alrighty.
Tell me about returning weapon.
Oh yeah. Returning weapon. Draw a card, swap a card from your hand for a card in your gauge. It is fine if you're on your front side and you really need a card back from your gauge that
And
you
you
put
can't
there
hit.
by
Yeah.
like you discarded something because you got swept, then you hit your opponent, you put it back into your gauge, then you boost this and you put it back in your hand.
Okay, so it's a shortcut
Escape mode.
on your exceed mode that you can use with zero investment once rather than
Yeah.
forever and ever. Okay.
And then, returning blade will go to your discard and then you can recur that later.
Right. So this is something that you'll use if your opponent forces you to use it, but it's definitely not part of your game plan.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Is there any? I'm looking at I'm looking at the hit effect on Maori Defender and seeing if there's any need to do this because I'm looking for the boost that you foreshadowed for me, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be this one.
Nope. It is
Okay.
on an ultra as
Okay.
that hint.
I'll have to wait longer then. Um, shall we continue to focus charge?
Sure. I'm gonna just go straight to the boost on this one because it's the thing that everyone's gonna notice when he's doing on the card.
Oh,
Possession. One force. Add 3 cards from your hand to your gauge.
okay, so I can exceed then.
Yes. You can turn 1, put 3 cards in your gauge, and then exceed.
Oh my god, what is going on? So, all right, there's another part of this card that we'll get to in a second, but this on
Yeah.
its own is, I would say, is a well, at the very least, it's stuff coming from your hand, so it's a resource cost, but not on Zoey. It isn't.
No.
So
And
do you just do this every time it appears in your hand?
I mean, if you're already in exceed mode, you don't need to, but if you open with this in your opening hand, you do it. That's it. Like you do this and then you exceed.
Okay, awesome. Um, if you're not in your exceed mode, you don't even need to. That's so scary. Because I mean, what would the point be? Once you're in exceed, again, we'll get to the ultras. I'm sure they're cool, but once you're in exceed mode, things that go in your gauge are just going to go back to your hand anyway,
Yeah.
and then you get them in your hand, but they were in your hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
unless you literally need to pay for the gauge, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, unless you need to pay for something that costs more than 2 force in a turn, you
Mhm.
put a bunch of stuff in your gauge, and then you have free resources to move around with later. But that is a pretty narrow use case.
Yeah. This
Okay,
is
it's
a
a way to
boost.
exceed.
Most of the other boosts that exist in the game now that could do this. Because there's a few are either on an ultra. Oh, actually, I think all of them are on ultra, but usually has some sort of cost. Bison's requires him to reveal his hand.
Yep.
Kokonoe's gives the opponent +3 power. Um, I can't think of any. Oh, Hilda's does it for both players.
Yep.
So like, it's this is not a balance boost.
Yeah, this is not okay. And also, those characters, well, I mean, Bison at least is like themed around spending gauge.
Yeah,
So at least his kit is built with the intention of him having a lot of interesting decisions to make. This is if this is just a way to exceed, not only is it like a not very healthy boost, it's also kind of a boring one.
yeah.
Okay.
You mulligan for this generally.
Okay. So if you get it
And
in your
then
opening hand, you do it, and that's kind of the end of the story with it.
yep.
Okay. What about focus charge?
Focus charge is a fine attack. It's close 3, +1 power for each space you weren't able to close, and then push the opponent 1 space per point of damage you dealt with the attack. It's 1/2/5, so it's above curve if you throw it at 4, but it doesn't do a lot of damage. It pushes 2 if you do it at 5, so it doesn't beat sweep.
Right.
If you do it on curve at 3, it does beat sweep because it pushes 3.
Okay. So it's a board state allowing. That's pretty much like
Yeah,
center of the board or less.
yeah,
Um it's a way to beat sweep on curve, which is cool. I'm noticing per point of damage dealt with this attack means that if you put a power boost on it or EX it or something like that, you're pushing farther.
yeah. If you throw this at range 1, it pushes 5, which is a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so I'm noticing. So we have quite a bit of distance making attacks so
Mhm.
far. Is Zoey typically trying to keep her opponent far away?
Zoe wants to put her opponent wherever the opponent doesn't like to be. That's really where it is.
That's fair. Okay, so against a zoner, um, this card is not particularly useful anymore. But if okay, I see. So just like with sure you can. If this is the attack my opponent can't deal with, I'm going to mash this over and over again. If I'm up against Zangief or somebody, right, somebody who
Yeah,
wants to be close up, I'm using these cards over and over again,
yeah,
and
costs.
yeah, and just keeping them at bay. And I don't care what my melee options are because I'm keeping them at range the whole time.
And for those who are kind of having a hard time understanding just how painful it is to play against Zoe, imagine you're playing Zangief and your opponent has infinite copies of Cross.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, end of lesson, right? Like, thank you for watching Access Exceed, everybody. This is it. Um, and maybe not every character like Zangief has weaknesses as like obvious and pronounced. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, Zangief wants to be at range one. That means that the things that you want to recur are things that aren't going to let him be at range one. But
Yeah,
every character has something that they
yeah.
don't want. They're unless they're like a perfect counterpuncher, the way that like Kai is or somebody.
Kai,
Where
Ryu, there's a few
yeah,
others.
like the Shoto archetype, who is honestly kind of like how we're describing Zoe here, who is sort of designed to do the things that your opponent doesn't want you to do. Zoe can just do that forever.
Yeah, at least with other Shotos, like, he used up both of his Shoryukens, so now I don't have to worry about a DP. Well,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
okay. So the Zangief example, and I guess we're talking sort of like counterplay philosophy now. The
yeah,
Zangief example is like my opponent from turn one has a thing that they want to do, and I can stop it by recurring this thing. The
yeah,
Shoto example is like over the course of the game, holes will open up in their kit naturally over
mhm,
the course of play. And I will look at those holes and say, oh, got it. You can't deal with Shoryuken anymore. Mash, mash,
yeah,
mash, 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 and now the game's over.
yeah.
Okay. That's
And that's why I
that's the
said
game plan.
Zoe. Yeah, I mean that's why I said Zoe has a high skill ceiling
Right.
because while you can like loop block or sweep or focus or whatever, with characters that can deal with those kind of things, you have to wait and figure out when they're unable to deal with a card, and then you can use it,
Right.
which takes some thinking.
Sure. And it takes and like it resists a line, right? It doesn't give you
Yeah.
the ability to say at the start of the game, okay, this is what I'm doing. it
Mhm.
it's not interactive the way that we typically think of Exceed being interactive, but at least it involves your opponent spending cards and then you taking advantage of an
Yes.
opening or an opportunity. Okay, so we'll use this attack over and over again if it's the thing that will beat our opponent.
Yeah, and if you use it at 3, it resets you to 4. So then you can play it again, and then it will reset you to 2, and then you
Okay,
can play it again, and it'll reset. I mean, obviously, there's not enough board to push you that, but unless you're at range 1, this will almost always put you to a spot where you can just play it again, and you just put it back in your hand.
right, all right. So it's corner carry as well. It's just like push, push, push. Now we're in the corner.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's also kind of messed up.
Yep.
Not messed up to the point that we would sort of have like an eye pop at it the way that Shoryuken is. But like again, if it's the thing that beats my opponent, I'm just gonna keep on using it.
Yep.
Okay. How about gut shot?
Um, this one is honestly pretty fair for her kit, as much as that's a statement that could be made.
Yeah, this
It's
is
a below.
yeah, keep talking. I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
recognize the shape, I think, or it's pretty close
yeah.
to it.
It's a below curve option that gives you advantage in dodges slows.
Sure.
Like it's fine. You played a 3, they play a slow, you step back, you get advantage. Um, you're probably not gonna play this close because it doesn't do enough damage. Um, it's just kind of fair, which is like one of the only cards in our kit that is like that. Um,
I
usually,
completely I
yeah,
completely failed to find the card I was looking for. It was April Fools has got the best of me. It's Sepultura.
Giovanna has one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Giovanna's card. It's a way to back up at 3 to dodge sweep or something.
yeah.
Yep.
It's 4 speed and it moves you 1, so you
Yeah.
can just step back. Yeah,
Yeah. Plus advantage, which is cool.
yeah. But yeah, so I mean, this card's fine. If you want to play fair, you can do this. That's not Zoey though. Zoey doesn't play fair.
Yeah, this is the least exciting thing that we've well, exciting might be the wrong word. This is the least relevant thing that we've found so far in the kit, it seems like.
Yeah, advantage is nice. I think it's the only oh no, she has one more advantage. She has advantage on her ultra.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, um, the boost is good. +2 power, draw a card. So you get to cycle a card. You get to put something in your discard to recur later. You get +2 power. You can use it with Maori Defender too for power.
Sure.
It's
Okay. So it's another way to hit for 5. You get a card in the process.
Yep.
Um
It's fine.
we talked about this a little bit in the Heidi lesson, but just to make sure that we're covering all our bases here. You may play a boost that does not cause a strike. Oh, for free. It says right on there. Never mind. So
Yeah.
this, if you do it during Maori Defender, it's not. There's no force cost.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a clarification for what we're talking about, play a boost means that you have to pay its cost. Put a boost into play means you don't have to pay its cost.
Right. But this specifies that you're
For
not
free.
paying the
Yeah.
cost on it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, this just seems like something that I would play in neutral.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
It's fine. I mean,
So
like you could do this to draw cards too. Like you're looking for your blocks, you're looking for another card that beats people.
right. So
It's fine.
this could actually be force if I needed force to dig through my deck or something. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's probably a boost. Um. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We found the fair card. It sounds like.
Yeah. This card is probably the only card in this entire kit that really could be printed into a modern Exceed character.
Wow. Yeah. That's telling. I think. Shall
All
we move on
right.
to the ultras?
Yes. So Tsunami Slicer, 1 to 4, 4/6 hit. You may pay 1 gauge to gain advantage. This is a fine ultra. Like it's pretty fair. I mean, it's 3 gauge, 1 to 4, 4/6 gain advantage. You don't have to gain advantage, so you can use it as a DP.
Yeah. Faust. I'm sorry. I just saw the boost.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, let's finish talking about the attack really quick. But I need to interject that I don't think my mic picked it up. I gasped when I saw rejuvenation because I kind of know where we're going now.
Yeah.
But yeah, tsunami slicer, 2 gauge, super above curve, advantage gainer. That's cool.
Yep. I mean, it's a fine way to she moves out a bunch. Um, you then you have this to threaten if you need to.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah, rejuvenation.
Okay. It's a continuous boost after you gain 4 life. So not only can Zoe block forever, Zoe can also gain infinite life.
Sigh. Yeah. All right. So this is something that I can just play raw and
Yes.
then bank on the fact that I'm gonna win the next, or at least hit.
You
Or I'm sorry,
you
at
don't
least
even
not
need
get
to hit.
stunned.
It's
Yeah,
an
just
after, yeah.
yeah. I'm at range 8 and I throw grasp and I get it back.
Yeah.
Or I can put it on Maori Defender.
Yes. And
Um,
because Mirror Defenders is a hit, you put it into play, you regain 4 life, it stays in play, and then you regain 4 life on the next strike.
in the next strike too. Good lord. And God, for that one, I'm not even committing because I'm not
Yeah.
putting the boost in ahead of time and then losing to an EX attack or something. I'm literally seeing the board state, seeing that I'm going to get my after, and playing the card.
And it's not hard to hit with Maori Defender either. It's a
Yeah,
cross. It's really easy to hit with.
yeah. That's like Juno levels of non-commitment to a really really scary uh boost.
Yeah.
So I realistically, how frequently am I getting this per game?
I mean, if you have them both in your hand, it's really not hard to do that. And then if you're exceeded, the Tsunami Slicer will go to your discard, and then you just put it in your gauge, put it back into your hand. You put the Maori Defender back into your hand because you hit with it, and then you do it again.
Yeah, okay. So blocking forever is one way to stall the game out forever. rejuvenation is another way to stall the game out forever, both of which require my exceed mode. If I'm thinking about it in terms of, I'm not always going to exceed because this is something that I might not have to, because the other way to kill my opponent
Yeah,
might be just recur an option that they can't deal with.
yeah,
Does rejuvenation still have a place in that line of play, or is it really
yeah.
more of an exceed mode thing?
I mean, consider, even 4 extra life is a lot.
Sure.
8 extra life is insane. Like,
Yeah.
even if you get the one Maori defender with rejuvenation in a game, that's regaining 8 life.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's like
Yeah.
2 strikes from your opponent.
And then you have another copy of Tsunami Slicer. You're probably not playing it for the attack. There's a chance that you have 16 life per deck.
Yeah,
That's half of your life total, Faust.
yeah.
Okay. So do you ever play it in neutral? Or is it
You should, sure. I mean, if you need the life or you just want to boost with it, go for it.
okay.
I mean, like 4 life for an ultra is pretty good. Imagine it's like 4 armor, but you don't have to get hit to make it worth it.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Okay. So in terms of like raw numbers, doing it with Maori Defender is probably overall better. But if my
Yes.
opponent has a Shoryuken or something like that, and I'm not 100% sure I can confirm my after. Wait, no, I already said it's non-committal. If I don't have
Yeah.
Maori Defender at all or something, I can just
Yeah.
play it.
Yep.
Okay.
And you can just play. Sure, you can move out of the way of their attack and still get the life because it's an after. You don't have to hit.
Right. Right. Okay. So once I get it into play, it doesn't matter anymore. There's like, yeah,
Yeah.
they can probably deal with this card if they have the right setup. There's no way that they can stop me from getting my after at this speed.
Yeah. Or
Okay.
like you put it on block or something.
Right. Yeah, so the recur block uh plan doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. I can become immortal twice if I want
You,
to.
you can.
Awesome.
Like generally, if you're not actually actively trying to kill your opponent, they will just slam their forehead into the table until they run out of cards.
Yeah, and I mean now you might like I know what you meant by kill your opponent. You meant kill your opponent's character. Now you are running the risk of killing your real life opponent.
Yeah.
Yeah, concussions are dangerous business, people. Don't let your opponent slam their head into the table. Okay, so that's unreasonable. Again.
Yes.
Um Boost, right? This is not an
Yeah.
attack if we're playing to win, it seems
I've
like.
actually seen people use it as an attack because you can put it back in your hand if you hit with it, so you can use it as the boost.
Oh my god, yeah, okay. So yeah, all of these things, it's just that most of the time the attack has been better than the boost. It hasn't
Yeah.
really come up. But attack recursion is boost recursion.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So do both if you need to. This is a strong defensive shape. It's a strong offensive option because you get advantage out of it. You're going to be at
Yeah.
range anyway from all of your various ways to make range. Just
Yeah. And
remember that rejuvenation is scary.
keep in mind because you pay gauge and then you pay another gauge if you want advantage. One of the gauge that you paid goes back to your gauge because you get your ability, and then you put the ultra back in your hand.
Right.
So you're not even spending all of your gauge.
Right. Yeah.
And
So
if you
it's a 2 gauge ultra with a 1 gauge kicker that costs 2 gauge.
or you just put 3 cards from your gauge into your hand, you can also just do that.
Right. Yeah. So the exceed mode actually does just make a lot of this recursion nonsense much smoother. Even if I'm
Yes,
not going for the block stuff.
correct.
The other recursion stuff that I can do, it involves a lot less steps to get my stuff
Uh,
back into play.
yeah.
Okay.
Like usually, if you exceed and then you just have decent cards in your hand, unless the opponent is some character that has ways to kill you, like in 2 or 3 turns, or has a completely unreasonable option, you just win
Okay.
if you're a decent pilot of the character.
Right. Okay. Um God, that boost is really messed up. All right. Tell me about the final card here, Neocosmic Flare.
This is one of the ways you can finish people. It's a moderately like on par projectile normally, but then you can spend 12 force for +1 power per force spent. And remember, you never really spend the cards in your hand or your gauge,
Right.
so you always have cards in your hand. So like this can be a 13 damage attack. It
That's
usually
actually quite
isn't.
affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It usually isn't, and I don't play this card much. Also consider if you spend cards out of your gauge for force, they go back to your hand. So it's not like you just empty your hand and they're out of cards if
Right.
you're in exceed mode.
Right.
Um,
If
you
you're
can
not
also
if you're not spending for the before effect, this is or if you're not spending to kill your opponent with the before effect, this does not seem particularly. It's a pretty narrow range band, um, not especially fast. Like the before effect is why you'd be playing this card.
yeah. Also, it's not really an opportunity cost to play this because if you whiff, you're spending one gauge. That's
Right.
it.
Right. Oh yeah. All of the commitment is after validation. And one gauge is fake for Zoey.
Yep.
Okay. So you're not going to play this if it would keep you from exceeding if you're planning to exceed or something like that. But if you are
Hmm.
trying to kill your opponent from 13 life, this is a pretty good way to do it.
Yeah. And it's like, why kill your opponent when you can let them deck out?
Right. So
I mean,
I mean
you can, yeah.
the quote on the ultra here is ironic. I didn't want to use this, but you've left me no choice. Zoey always has a choice, and
Yeah.
she could just let the opponent bleed themselves to death. This is what you play if you, as the Zoey player, like have a bus to catch and want to
Yeah.
end the game early.
Uh-huh.
Okay, she doesn't
And
need it to
then
win games, but it's available.
yeah, and then an apple a day is a boost. I mean, it's fine. Draw 3 cards, add one to your gauge. Sure. I mean, you can dig through your deck a little bit. You get to add a gauge. It's all right. I mean, you're not going to use the attack often, so why not use the boost if you really need to look for new stuff?
Okay, and that's the only reason you would do it. You're not worried about hand hand resources. You're not worried about paying for things. You're looking for options when you are drawing cards, basically ever. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you like all you have is normals and you need like a sure you can or like Maori defender, then you boost this and you look for it.
Okay.
I mean, like this is also consider if you change cards with this, you draw 3. So this is basically draw one. This is draw one extra card and add one to your gauge.
Yeah,
So
that's solid. It's
yeah,
not super exciting, but that's solid.
yeah,
Okay. So that's a rough kit. Um, it seems like it's interesting because I can see the skill ceiling stuff because a lot of it's very reactive to your opponent, but it's very a lot of the uses for this card these cards are fairly prescribed. Like this is often an
mhm,
attack, this is often an attack. This is like these are boosts. That decision making is not super hard, but figuring out what my opponent can't deal with is.
yeah.
So in terms of and I we'll get to the normals in just a second, just among her specials and ultras, in terms of what a Zoe game looks like,
Mhm.
when are you making the decision on how to best kill your opponent? It's just like a crucial option goes down, you just change gears entirely, and now that's your new game plan,
From a perspective of trying to win the game,
right?
the best game plan for Zoe is to make it so your opponent can never do anything. Just play every card that beats them, move, boost, change cards until you get the options that they can't beat, and then just play them forever. Maybe you exceed, maybe you get to the infinite block, maybe you get to infinite life, but you want to stall the game and run your opponent out of cards. And if your opponent never hits you and they run out of cards first, you still win,
Right.
and that's significantly easier than killing them half the time.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes you just end up killing them because they can't beat sweep, and you play sweep
You
five
play
times.
sweep over and over again, sure, yeah. Like the I guess optimal Zoe play
Mm.
is beating your opponent in a way that they let you play another game.
Yeah,
So so if you are intending to win the tournament set you're playing in a way that isn't a disqualification because your opponent rage quit,
yeah,
maybe you do need to kill them so that they did you didn't take too long. But other
yeah,
than that, like there's no reason for you to kill them if you don't have to kill them unless it's an expedient.
yeah.
Can she be forced to be offensive? Like can she be forced to play sweep over and over again? Or does she have so much card selection or so much time from like rejuvenation and block that she can that no character can actually make her be aggressive.
Um, Realistically, the only characters that can make her sweat are ones that also don't play fair. Like there are some characters that are not, the crazy busted ones that can make her sweat. Like
Right.
Bison is a good example. His card quality and his ability to put down cards that she can't beat are very good.
Right.
And
There's
Zoe
not a
wants
lot of
to kind
things in this kit that really threaten him the way that they would the way that she needs them to be threatening so that she can recur them forever.
yeah.
Okay.
And his resource generation is really high too. So he can do that. Guile can do it as well. I mean, he can just go big hand mode and then start throwing attacks out over and over again. And if Zoe can't find the right answer to them, then he will eventually kill her.
Okay.
Um,
But
but
her answer to that isn't all right, now I need to put together some offensive pressure here. It's to dig through her deck faster.
yeah,
Like the offensive Zoe action is change cards. It seems like it's not attack until it's a way to deny the opponent options or capitalize on an opening. Her game plan is based on finding those options.
yeah,
Okay. Ugh. All right.
yeah. I mean, when you have a card that answers everything, the answer to your problem is to find it.
Yeah. Sure. And there are going to be, sure you can beat every normal, but not every normal. Like not like characters have cards more than normals. If your opponent has a speed dodge or a Tatsu or something, you have to look and see what exactly you need to beat.
Mhm.
Um, but that is the goal is find the options that they can't deal with, both in terms of like find them in like mentally and then get them out of your deck and then recur them over and over again.
Yeah.
Okay. How do the normals play into this?
Um,
Other than hey, sweep is a great way to just uh kill your opponent by recurring it over and over again.
Yeah, sweep and focus are really good to recur. Grasp is fine, cross is good, assault and diver, spike are like not as useful. But
Right.
your boosts are good because there are moments where your cards don't beat your opponent. And in that case, a lot of the time the normal boost can make up for that. Speed or power can help, movement can help. She doesn't have a lot of movement on her boost. I actually don't think she has any movement on her boost.
So
Um
so while I'm waiting for these perfect options or while I'm waiting for the opponent to run themselves out of
mm,
cards, I need something to represent threat into them. So I will
yeah.
boost power or I need something to get consistency, so I'll boost speed. But that is a consideration that I'm doing in order to run them out of options, and then once I've run them out of options, I just kill them, right? Or not
Yeah.
kill them, right? I can do what I can do. I can abuse
Yeah.
whatever option.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm not trapped in here with you, you're trapped in here with
trapped
me type
with me. Okay,
mentality.
right.
Yeah.
I get you. So the boost. So my normals in general are for surviving long enough, and maybe they are the option that my opponent can't deal with anymore in the later
Yeah.
game. But in the early game, they're for um keeping myself alive and playing neutral for as long as I need to play neutral. And then once I don't
Yeah.
need to play neutral anymore, I do my Zoe thing.
Yeah. They're also like cards that you might not want to recur because again, you can get red and like
Sure.
really the only way you're gonna lose against a character that plays fair is to lose in the early game before you can get set up and then get red a few times later.
Right. Right. So my opponent is going to be looking for opportunities to claw back any sort of advantage they can. Often that's going to be represented by reading. Don't give them the opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Um, one of the questions I always ask is about economy,
Yeah.
and on Zoe that feels like such a perfunctory question. But the thing that you said earlier about how she only really uses like the first 10 to 15 cards of her deck, and
Yeah.
the only reason she would ever go below that is because she's digging for specific options.
Mhm.
Um, does card disruption do anything to her? Does she care? Or does that just mean she might have to dig a little bit farther to find something else to abuse?
So it is a thing that you can do because she only gets the top card or discard. If you can put the cards she wants 5 cards down, it's really hard for her to get it again.
Okay. So resources being infinite are not the same thing as resources being easily at hand.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I mean, like,
5 turns worth of after triggers or hit after triggers, whatever,
yeah,
is like that's a significant time investment if she needs to get an option back.
yep.
Okay. So that is
Also,
something that I
usually,
could do.
I mean, usually if you hit your opponent 5 times, they're probably pretty dead too.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. So economically, in terms of like running her engine, quote unquote, there's not really anything too too specific that my opponent that I need to do to keep myself going. But
Yeah.
uh the possibility of losing options in the short term is something that I do need to mitigate when I can.
Yeah. Usually there'll be like 2 or 3 cards that you just don't have access to in the later game because they're so far down in your discard that you're never getting them out.
Okay. Um and all right, so when I'm hmm. And I mean if I'm being proactive about recurring the things that I know that I need, um that probably doesn't matter. Right? Like
Mhm.
I can just use the thing like you said, I'm only going through the first 10 to 15 cards anyway because those are the things that I do have ready access to because I'm just going to be getting them back over and over again.
Yep.
So why not?
Mhm.
Um okay. God, what a weird character. What a weird way to structure a lesson
Look,
then,
when they made the game, they really didn't have any idea about balance or any of that.
right?
Like, there's a lot of cards and abilities in season one that are really cool when you look at them, but
Right. And that
they
they
really
don't
can't
really
exist.
survive contact with the enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like recurring cards and looping things, cool. I mean, we have Hadoken, which is like a much better balanced version of everything that Zoe does,
Right.
right? And we have some other cards that do that. We got lightning, the kick that Penley has. We have low tiger shot.
Sure.
We have Ken Hadoken. Like those cards that exist that do that.
Yeah,
Um,
even there's like little bits of it in like in Cyrus's kit, for example. Like I
yeah,
feel like there's a direct design lineage from Galeblade to whatever Cyrus's Aria, I think it might be his recurring projectile to
Story of
Hadoken.
the
Like,
Winds. Yeah,
yeah, that feels like a design team slowly honing in on what Hadoken eventually looked like over 3 seasons.
yeah.
So there's something
And
there.
I have good news for everyone that thinks that Zoe is cool and wants to try her. And that is, there is another character that is like Zoe, has a high skill ceiling, that recurs things, that will not make your opponent drive their head through a wall. And that's Nine. Because
Yeah,
Nine has a good recursion mechanic that's balanced enough with her cards that it's you can play the Modern Exceed.
you can do it. You can
Yeah,
live this fantasy without completely breaking the game open.
yeah,
Okay. I mean, and like that is as good a like I kind of like Red Horizon. I think Red Horizon has some interesting ideas in it, and I think it gets sort of like unfairly maligned by people who don't play it sometimes. I'm not saying that's you, Faust.
yeah.
I'm saying that's a community
Yeah,
thing.
that's fair enough.
But like if the best you can say about a character is that they inspired later better designs, that's actually not a horrible thing, right? So like
Mhm.
like let's give Zoe some due here for uh for being an interesting idea that didn't actually work in practice and that was then iterated on. Um doesn't really help my opponent very much when they're playing against her.
Yeah,
We already talked a little bit about counterplay when we mentioned like how Bison is or Guile are pretty good into her.
yeah.
How do you stop her? Like if that question can actually be asked,
So,
general counterplay tips for dealing with Zoe.
so if you're playing against somebody that is a competent pilot, unless their deck order is really bad, it's ridiculously hard to win.
Yeah.
There are a few things that you can do, but a lot of the time it slows her down more than stops her. Anything that makes her put cards from her hand into her discard or from her gauge into her discard without actually spending them is good, because if you can put the card far enough down in her discard, she can't get it back without reshuffling.
Right.
Um, Having your options stay available through the game is also good. You know, if you run out of something and she's going to spam a card, you reshuffle. It, it might happen that that's, 5 cards into your deck,
Right.
because your options are lose to that card forever or get the options back to beat it so you don't lose to that card forever.
At least for, as you said, to slow her down, at least to give you
Yeah.
something else to do. Okay.
Um, and also recognize what her setups are going to be. So sure, you can beat every normal, but if you play sweep, she has to put you at range 4.
Right.
So if she puts you at range 4 and then you have a card that beats her at range 4, well, you can make her use that card to put you at a different range and then beat her afterwards.
Right. And she probably doesn't have answers to every single. She probably has answers to every single thing you can do, but probably doesn't have answers to every single thing that you can do at once.
Yeah.
So if you can do that, if you can get her to a range that she can't immediately fight you, she's momentarily threatened, you might be able to capitalize on that and make some progress.
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually what will happen when you play against Zoe is either you will get rolled over, which doesn't always happen, but it happens, or you'll
Unfortunately,
start
you might get rolled over very slowly too.
yeah, or you'll start winning, and then you'll find that you just can't win anymore, and it's very frustrating because you've used all your options to beat her and she didn't.
Right. You've exhausted yourself, and she still basically
Yeah.
has everything ready to go.
Uh, so I I played Zoe a bunch back when seasons 1 through 3 were out, because that was still at the time when Red Horizon was kind of legal in um competitive.
Sure.
Like, it was when, rotation was first being considered and stuff, because there were
There weren't that many
some.
seasons at the time.
Yeah, and Red Horizon was by far the most unbalanced of the seasons, although season 2 does have some egregious offenders too.
Right.
Um and I stopped playing Zoe after a while because, like, they were pretty much non-games. You don't really play Exceed when you play Zoe. You play Solitaire while your opponent is trying to stab you.
Right. And we need to clarify, it's not actually super clear whether Faust means tries to stab you in real life or in the game.
Yeah, that's I have I Dizzy Mac, who's another person who's done guides on this.
Yeah.
We had a legacy tournament where pretty much everything except for Alice, Jamina, and Carmine were legal.
Yep.
I played Zoe in that. I don't remember what he said to me after the tournament, but it was something along the lines of, "I never want to play against that abomination again."
Yeah, I mean, thank goodness the two of you are still friends at least. This is the kind of character that can legitimately like turn games very sour, it sounds like.
Yeah,
So, I guess more than maybe any other lesson on this show, um if you are dedicated to not just treating Zoe as a historical curiosity and really want to play her, cool. Uh maybe show your opponent this guide before you put them in a game and let them make the decision. Um, because this sounds like it, I can imagine a person for whom this character could be very fun. I can't
yeah.
really imagine an opponent for whom this character would be really fun.
I will say, if you want to play Zoe, and you want your opponent to have at least some fun, if you give them one of the 3, like, boss characters in the game, Carmine, Alice, Juno, Jumina, I guess there's 4 of them, then they'll probably have a decent time, because, like, the big upside of Zoe is that you'll have options that your opponent can't beat, and those characters are really notorious for having cards that just can't be beaten.
Right. Yeah.
So, like,
So
they'll
so
have the ability to fight you.
so there might be a place for her in like the Super Exceed Turbo boss meta that occasionally gets thrown around. But outside of that, just be very careful. Like certainly don't ever play Zoey into a new player, for example. Like don't represent the game through Zoey.
Yeah.
Um okay. I
She
mean,
also kind of gives you some bad habits if you play her too much because your measure of using resources gets skewed.
sure, and Exceed is like fundamentally a game about resource management.
Mm.
Okay. So that's something to avoid. Yeah. All right. So um be careful with Zoey. If you really do want to win, we've got some strong blueprints to for how to do it. Just remember that the people that you are playing are probably going to be people that you need to talk to afterward. Um, Faust, this was a weird one, but thank you so much. I feel like I now know more about Zoey than I ever wanted to know. It's going to make me think real hard about the legacy of Exceed design and maybe about the players that I'm enabling by releasing this guide. But hopefully, if everybody Zoe's responsibly, we'll all be okay. But thank you so much for your time, especially for these back to back lessons. I really appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Yeah, it's always fun. And folks, I hope you enjoyed it, even just to uh, watch me struggle to keep my calm during during this lesson. Um, I'll see you all for the next one. Goodbye, everybody.